Hello, team. Welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is a Ukraine news update, second part thereof, for the 9th of August 2024. You might even be able to hear the sound of the booming music. I don't know if you can on my mic, but there's a phone party at the pool that I was just at, so I thought now's the time to run upstairs and do a quick news update for you. Apologies if it's slightly more chaotic than it normally would be, as I'm not at home, etc., etc. Okay, we're going to start with the military aid here, and with Secretary Antony Blinken, Secretary of State, saying we're sending Ukraine a significant new package of urgently needed munitions. The support will help Ukraine protect its troops and its people and reinforce its capabilities across the front lines. This is quite interesting in its timing, that it's probably been on the cards for some time, right? And the US may not well have known about the attack into Kursk, and there was indications that this was, in fact, a bit of a surprise to them. But that they're giving this package now can be read as a sort of validation of that attack into Kursk, which I think is important, even if it's not anything to do with it and it's just coincidental. I think it's a good timing for this package. Now, I don't think it's going to be anything particularly exciting in terms of top of the ticket items, but this is all, and I say this every time they have these kind of packages. It's a 125 million package of PDA, Presidential Drawdown Authority. So this comes from US stocks. It means that they don't have to make it; it gets there as quickly as possible. And this is all the usual stuff that they need on a regular, weekly, monthly basis. So Stinger missiles, ammunition for HIMARS, 155 mil and 105 mil artillery ammunition, multi-mission radars, tube-launched optically tracked wire-guided missiles, so they're tow missiles for Bradleys, Javelin and anti-tank for 84 anti-armor systems, high mobility multi-purpose wheeled vehicle Humvee ambulances. Interesting, but I'd like to know how many of those they're getting. Small arms ammunition, demolitions equipment and munitions, equipment to protect critical national infrastructure, and spare parts, ancillary equipment, services, training, and transportation. So the usual kind of package, but good to see that they need that. And talking about HIMARS ammunition, I have started seeing it seems to be peaks and troughs with HIMARS. Sometimes you don't see much at all, and you think, oh, have they run out of ammunition? And then you hear other times, like some months ago, the Ukrainians are saying we've got more HIMARS ammunition than we've ever seen. And you see peaks and troughs in terms of video evidence to support the use of HIMARS. And right now, as in the last 3 or 4 or 5 days, I've seen a lot of HIMARS videos out again, and I think they are having a bit of a purple patch, the Ukrainians, for doing all sorts at the moment. We'll talk a little bit about that in the geopolitical section to come. Right, going back to military aid, Lithuania will support Ukraine with drones worth 5 million euros, reports the MOD in Lithuania. It's noted that the MOD has tested Lithuanian combat drones to select those that best meet the needs of the Ukrainian military. So that's excellent. In fact, Lithuania will provide a new package of military aid as a whole separate thing to Ukraine in August. 14 M113 APCs, short-range air defense system, together with ammo for it, electronic warfare systems, all-terrain vehicles with spare parts, trailer loaders, rifles, ammo, and smoke charges. So that's going to be useful. Of course, Lithuania is a relatively tiny country compared to, say, the US and many others, but they are trying their hardest to support Ukraine as much as possible. Going on to a few pieces on Germany. So Ukraine says Kyiv Independent may use German-supplied equipment in Kursk Oblast. So they may use it. This is permission to use German equipment into Russia. And that's a Bundestag Defense Committee chair. So it's German Army Defense Committee chair says, quote, with a handover to Ukraine, these are Ukrainian weapons. Marcus Faber told German newspaper Berliner Morgenpost on the 8th of August. So that's really good news. The Germans are giving the Ukrainians explicit permission there. Even though I can already see the headline says German aid to Ukraine, German tanks rolling into Russia, I fully support this. And in theory, the German government should also support this, as we allowed Ukraine to do stuff like this on the 31st of May 2024. According to official statements, the authorization to engage Russian territory with weapons donated by Germany is not limited to individual weapon systems, meaning that not only air defense systems, but also armored vehicles have been given the green light. This, of course, includes Marder 103 infantry fighting vehicles, of which Germany has supplied at least 120 to Ukraine. Now you only have to open Google Maps to see that Kursk Oblast is located near Kharkiv, which is exactly the region that was explicitly given the green light. So there is also no issue, meaning no German red lines have been crossed. The only question that could be asked critically would be, is this the most sensible use of resources? But in the end, that's also up to Ukraine. So any German government response should be very minimal, not to mention that they could have prepared for it. I mean, we knew that the 82nd Separate Air Assault Brigade was involved, which I think was the first brigade to get their hands on a Marder 103 infantry fighting vehicle. So it was just a matter of time. If there is a publicly negative reaction from the government, that would be downright outrageous. Ukraine has been given the green light to do exactly that. It's time for us to look beyond our nose and not always refer to our dark past when it comes to Russia. We are now a different nation. I always had the feeling that our politicians forget that when it comes to Russia, and that's reacting to evidence that German equipment is being used inside Kursk. There were some quotes to, a Panzer being seen inside Russian territory again, with reference to Second World War, so on and so forth. And of course, they've used the German provided Patriot air defense system. They used that to shoot down a number of aircraft, 5 aircraft in the Bryansk region back in May 2023. So it's not for the first time German equipment's been used to strike inside Russia. Okay, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry has commissioned Rheinmetall, the German defense concern, to deliver 8 forward surgical team stations for its armed forces. The order comprises 8 turnkey systems with the advanced medical technology, including an X-ray container and an operating room. So here we have Flash News sort of reporting on that as well. 8 additional stations of advanced surgical teams. So that's, I think, what they would look like, something like that. Really good news for them. The Netherlands have previously provided some of those sorts of pieces of equipment, as have other nations, highly valuable. Bulgaria joins NATO mission to train Ukrainian military. So Bulgaria's cabinet ministers authorized the country's military on August 7th to train Ukrainian soldiers within the framework of NATO security assistance and training for Ukraine. So that's really good news at Bulgaria on the side. You want the countries like Bulgaria to be closer and closer in under the sphere of influence of NATO and the EU, so that they don't get pulled away like Hungary and Slovakia have been to that sphere of influence of Russia and then become problematic nations. And Bulgaria has the potential for that. It's obviously a former Soviet, USSR, under the guise of, the Warsaw Pact, and I'd have to look into the history of Bulgaria, but it's certainly has the potential to be much more aligned to Putin's Kremlin than one would like. And indeed, I think it's a president who is quite pro-Russian, whereas the rest of the administration is not. Geopol joins the ranks of the world's top 50 defense companies for the first time. So this is the Ukrainian national defense concern, now in the top 50 defense companies in the world. So that's really significant. The state-owned defense company, Ukrainian defense industry, Geopol, was ranked for the first time in history among those top 50 global defense companies by Defense News. Strategic Industries Minister Alexander Kamyshin has said on August the 8th. And then we're going to do a couple of Criso wiki threads on Russia's situation. This first one is: Russian sources say that soldiers with rare specialities such as tank drivers, drone operators, and even anesthesiologists are being sent to fight in the front lines and serve as stormtroopers. This is reportedly being caused by their severe shortage of assault troops. Remember, it's all about building up a picture of exactly what's going on in Russia, and what's happening in Kursk is I think, fascinating, because they're struggling to get troops to defend Kursk. In fact, I think the Russian MOD has now officially said to Putin that it won't be solved as quickly. It won't be solved particularly quickly, the Kursk problem. And I think that's a realization that they don't have the resources that you would expect them to have, being the second greatest army in the world. The amount of resources, of personnel, of equipment they've expended in this war, and that is being used on the front lines, means that they just can't suddenly throw all sorts of reserves at Kursk. And when you look at threads like this, you understand that, this really is an issue for the Russians. And actually, the Russians, there is I guess, a strain of thought to think that Russia might be in a bit of trouble. They might be a little bit more brittle at the moment than you might think, given that they've been making these consistent grinding advances and gains on the eastern front line, particularly inside Ukraine. But actually, it could belie quite a military fragility. The Russian blogger Anastasia Kashevarova, says there is a quote huge problem with the quote transfer of fighters with rare specialities to the assault units of the motorized riflemen. Kashevarova writes, quote, we receive letters with tragic stories about talented drone operators, RPG operators, tankers who are transferred to the stormtroops on the same day and died on the very first mission. And the problem is not that they failed to complete the assault mission, but that it is due to this practice, the number of soldiers with specialities is decreasing, and it takes time to train a new tanker or drone operator. At the same time, it is obvious that there is not an oversupply of servicemen with such specialities. There are also more egregious cases. For example, we had to deal with a situation where an anesthesiologist was sent to the front lines where he was digging trenches. Although you don't have to be a doctor to understand that he would be much more useful in a military field hospital. Calling this quite a talentless and irresponsible waste of personnel, Kashevarova attributes this to a quote shortage of stormtroopers on some parts of the front. She says that it is quote not uncommon for commanders to remove highly qualified specialists from their posts and send them into assaults. End quote. This is likely the result of two related issues. First, the Russians are suffering huge casualties in their assaults, which the Ukrainians call meat waves. Commanders likely find themselves needing to scrape together whatever troops they can find to man fresh assaults. Second, other Russian commentators have said that the field commanders are lying to their superiors about the losses they are sustaining. For nearly 2 years, Russian sources have repeatedly said that manpower is far more depleted than the general command recognizes or admits. According to Kashevarova, quote, without prior training and often without the necessary physical qualities, such servicemen, as a rule, are quickly killed in offensive actions. At the same time, it is also problematic to find replacements for them at their previous place of service. You need people trained in specific specialities and with experience. She writes that, quote, such situations can be resolved through the military prosecutor's office. She cites the example of a quote a grenade launcher soldier who was transferred to the stormtroopers but had to transfer cancelled following an appeal. However, Kashevarova cautions it is impossible to file appeals for every case. It takes no less than 30 days for an appeal to be processed. During this time, the soldier can die 300 times, she says, without waiting for the motherland to recognize him as a valuable specialist. So again, desperate times call for desperate measures, it appears. And that idea of Varanyo, of lying to your boss about what losses have been taken is a real issue, because when that information filters up to the top, I've wondered throughout this war really how much and Putin knows. How accurate is his understanding of what is going on in the war in Ukraine? I would wager that you and I, spending all the time we do pouring through the details of this war, have a slightly better understanding of the war than Putin does. I wonder whether that is obviously hugely speculative, but I wonder if there's an element of that he is just being fed such disinformation by those below him who want to cushion reality, cushion him from reality, that he might. I wonder, for example, what he thinks about Kursk and the attacks there, and why can't the Russians get enough troops there quickly, or does he? Am I wrong? And he actually has a great command of what's going on, but he must be sort of pulling his hair out at the reality then. Anyway, Chris Owicki does another thread here saying Russian commentators say that Russia's losing parity in the drone war with Ukraine. They blame outdated military commanders, the takeover of drone development by state contractors, and a dysfunctional military procurement system, which prioritizes loyalty over competence. The Chronicle of a Drone Operator Telegram channel has posted a commentary assessing why Ukraine has gained drone superiority over Russia. The drone operator highlights a push for monopolization, standardization, and simplification, which he says has been counterproductive. He blames a fixation of Russia Russian military decision makers on old military technologies. Quote, those who made such decisions can be understood because these steps are the three pillars of the old technological school where the Kalashnikov assault rifle, the Mosin rifle, and the RPG warhead live. But these same three reasons are the basis for defeat in the technological paradigm where FPV drones, Mavics drones, new means of communications, new means of reconnaissance, unmanned surface vessels, and foam plastic long-range aircraft live. He points out that Ukraine's senior decision makers are much younger than those in Russia. Quote, the enemy's decision makers are aged from 35 to 55 years. They all played CS, Counter-Strike, and Dota, Defense of the Ancients, like computer games. It is easier for them to understand the difference between a smartphone and a radio station. It is easier for them to introduce agile principles into the ministries and management and create a whole project office with a process acceleration function. It is easier for them to implement a matrix management structure. And they can do it not by word of mouth locally in one single corporation, but introduce it everywhere without any islands of safety for top officials. The drone operator notes that in contrast to Ukraine's rapid and diffused approach to developing and producing drones with the aid of startups and volunteer engineers in Russia, well-connected companies have taken over the field and driven out the volunteer enthusiasts. Quote, we lost the engineering school. Connected companies appeared to which funding and orders were transferred. All the enthusiasts who could integrate into the system at the initial stage of the special military operation and started making new technological miracle weapons were abandoned, left without money, and forced to leave the industry. Some went to war, some went into business, some went back to work. The systems engineers remained on the payroll of high precision corporations of the old technological paradigm. They are the good guys, but their competence, as it turned out, is insufficient, and they're all from a completely different field. The People's Engineering Front, which spontaneously formed in the first months of the war, has now practically collapsed. This is primarily due to the lack of money and support. With every new drone that comes to us for reverse engineering, we see the enemy's diversity of solutions expand. From the assembly culture, from the handwriting, we see that all these products are assembled by different teams. There are so many manufacturers on the other side that there is no talk of any standardization. This is something I talked about before, the idea that there's such a vast array of private entities, of corporations, of defense manufacturers, of foreign entities, of volunteer enthusiasts, of charity-based drone manufacturers, non-profits, all throwing their lot into helping Ukraine. Some will be to make a fast buck. Some will be to, like these non-profits like Wild Hornets, will be to produce the best things they possibly can at the lowest cost that they can to maximize efficiency and to get feedback from the front line to produce stuff that's going to be as useful as possible for the Ukrainians. And with all of these, you've got this kind of free market, and free market, this is the success of the free market, right, being applied in a really positive way so that you get innovation being driven, and it's not a monopolized, entirely state-run enterprise where people's pockets are being lined and they're producing things that are not not responsive to the needs of those on the front line that are using this equipment. And that, as a result, we have this asymmetry, and Ukraine is just really able to not only produce more drones than Russia, but also produce better drones. And likewise, in the training of these drone operators, have better trained drone operators too. So, to repeat, there are so many manufacturers on the other side that there is no talk of any standardization. It is clear that the competencies of the new technological war are being protected there, cultivated, and attracted from abroad. According to the blogger, the state revenue stream for developing drones has been captured by existing large manufacturers, making it pointless for the Russian government to dump helicopter money into the sector. A detachment of the source of funds from those who make drones and for whom they are made puts an end to the whole idea. The main money will go to professional grant recipients, and that's it. It's not important what you do, it's important that the grantors like your project. My comrades and I look at the enemy drone fleet and ask ourselves, if they were to work for the front, for the Ukrainian victory, would they have to pound the thresholds of local government initiatives? How many sharks Chaklunovs, Leleks, Bekovs, Dobrovs, Deltas, Transistovs, Cynics, and the whole sea of no-name FPV drones what they have invented and made. Another Russian mill blogger, Roman Alekine, agrees with the general complaint that the drone operator, the Telegram channel in question, and adds that a major problem lies in the culture of Russian state administration. He says that it is, quote, built on three pillars: snatch, dump responsibility, including through a report with 10 signatures, and simplify the focus of management to one loyal individual. There is also the main rule for the pillars: loyalty is higher than professionalism. Transferring management to drone procurement, management of drone procurement, to the Russian armed forces would not work either, in Alekina's view. Quote, maybe this is correct in one of the management models, but not in ours. The thing is that at this level, in most cases, management is not built better. There is no control, no responsibility, and no evaluation of the commander's work, which leads to the fact that he himself does not understand how to manage. Some bosses say that it is necessary to preserve personnel, but a day later, an order comes to make an unprepared attack on well-defended enemy positions with the prefix, quote, colonel, and further down the line, lieutenant colonel, major, captain, lieutenant. I don't care how you do it, but you must make it tomorrow. He says that the systems, quote, are set up in such a way as to avoid responsibility. The official who must make a decision is not ready to make a decision, since he can be accused of favouring his own people. Because of this, they drag each project through 10 commissions, each with several signatures. These are like witnesses that everything is honest. This is how they have been brought up by the system, and the Ministry of Defence system has not accepted alternatives yet. The system also favours cheapness over quality or effectiveness, according to the Russian engineer channel. This may be related to the frequent tendency of Russian defence contractors to boost their profits by charging excessive fees for cheap components. The channel comments that, quote, the flawed logic of reducing the cost of the product at any cost does not allow improving the quality of the drones, of the FPV drones, not as a reworked toy, but as a combat product. That is, additional elements are additional expenses, which increases the cost. But the procurement system thinks, wow, how expensive, but others make it much cheaper, so we'll buy from them. And hence drones appear that do not pass quality control, do not have additional systems for detonation, with cheaper components that reduce the probability of hitting by 2 or 3 times, and at a shorter range. So this goes towards, this whole system, Russian system goes towards, even if the Russians do have the production capacity of as many drones as the Ukrainians, that they are just far less effective, and that is translated across into the Tochny figures that have Ukrainians having more successful hits on personnel, on equipment, and now on positions and bunkers and so on and so forth. So yeah, as a result, the cost of hitting the target increases, but on paper there is savings. Alekina recommends establishing flexible financing for a smart network structure for drone development in electronic warfare. It's about the same, which will unite drone operators in the front with the center. Production lines should be built according to Toyota technology, i.e. the Kanban management system, whatever that is, with quick changeover, with the creation and support of logistics chains of both materials and components and finished products to the front. There should not be large contracts and large batches. This is the meaning of work in the constantly changing conditions of combat operations. Okay, so to translate lots of that would be like I said earlier, the responsiveness is not there in the Russian system. They are not responding to the needs of the front line. They're making things as cheaply as possible to make them en masse and simplify the system by effectively monopolizing it. But then you are getting a whole load of the same drones that are just crap, using poor components and easily able to be jammed by electronic warfare. Whereas with the Ukrainians having so many providers, then they're going to be using lots of different stuff on the front line. Yeah, it's a bit of a nightmare to learn how to use each of these things, but the Ukrainians are pretty resourceful and quick learners, and the use of this wide variety of drones means that the Russians are less able to be able to find solutions across the board to all of those drones, whereas the Ukrainians can jam these, a few of these drones, and that's jamming most of the Russian fleet of drones. So yeah, there you go. Now, this is worrying a lot of people. Iran will soon give its terrorist partner hundreds of satellite guided weapon systems to kill people in Ukraine. Reuters has said that dozens of military personnel from Russia are currently being trained on the Fath 360 and one other ballistic system. So the Iranians could well be sending ballistic missiles across to Ukraine. It's a real worry, and possibly the reason why the Russians have not been throwing as many missiles at Ukraine as one might have expected. I mean, like really big waves of missiles, is they just don't have those missiles, that they are struggling to produce decent numbers of missiles. And one option is, or maybe the only option presently open to them, is being able to get those weapons from Iran. Okay, so that's quite a lot of time spent on that. I will probably draw a line under that video and do a very short geopolitics video next. So stay tuned.